Hi, my name is Dr. Michele Finneran with Beck & Associates, and in this short educational video, I'm going to discuss the difference between secondary trauma and vicarious trauma. Indirect trauma is very serious and often not considered as such. Indirect trauma happens when we're exposed to horrific or difficult images, stories, or scenes secondhand, resulting in symptoms like those of trauma survivors. Vicarious trauma, or secondary trauma, are both forms of indirect trauma and are often used interchangeably. However, these two terms are different and can represent themselves in different ways. Here are the main differences between secondary and vicarious trauma. Secondary trauma, or secondary traumatic stress, or STS, is indirect trauma by hearing details or witnessing the aftermath of trauma experienced by another person. STS can occur if you are repeatedly exposed to distressing details of traumatic experience by others. Those who work in helping professionals like social workers, counselors, or first responders are at greater risk of experiencing secondary trauma. Loved ones of trauma survivors are also at great risk. STS symptoms are nearly identical to symptoms of PTSD, so much so that it may be diagnosed as such. Common symptoms include intrusive symptoms, where you may find yourself having unwanted trauma-related memories or dreams. Another symptom is avoidance, when you actively avoid anything that reminds you of the trauma. Or you may find yourself engaging in self-destructive behaviors, prone to anger outbursts, or having exaggerated startled fight or flight responses. Vicarious trauma, or VT, is used to describe the shift in worldviews that occur in people who are repeatedly exposed to or work with trauma survivors. It is more so an occupational challenge among social workers, law enforcement, emergency medical services, or other allied professionals that are constantly exposed to secondhand trauma. It's not the same as STS or PTSD, which refers to someone experiencing or witnessing trauma directly. The symptoms of vicarious trauma are often found in the shift in viewpoints, and they can be more cynical, fearful, and easily stressed. On the contrary, these symptoms of vicarious trauma can also become appreciative of what they have. The response can be negative, neutral, and even positive, and can change over time depending on the individual. The main difference between secondary trauma and vicarious trauma: while secondary trauma refers to witnessing the trauma experienced by others, vicarious trauma refers to the shift in worldviews that result in witnessing trauma experienced by others. As an example, a domestic violence shelter worker may start to believe that all relationships are dangerous, or a family social worker losing trust in anyone who approaches as their child. Despite this difference, both are indirect trauma experiences and should be addressed. Over time, repeated exposure to difficult images or scenes can negatively impact the way we react in certain situations and alter our mentality. Just because you did not experience this trauma firsthand does not mean your experience is invalid. You deserve to find the resources you need to set you in the right healing path.